Okay, I think we're ready, Mr. Chair, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. This is Chris Gans, Chair of the IID DRC. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Gans,
Present.
Mr. Barrett,
Present.
Mr. Burr,
Present.
Ms. Schambach,
Present.
Mr. Viner. I think he let me know he's not gonna be able to make it. And Mr. Tom.
Faye.
Faye, you're muted.
Sorry.
That's fine. We have quorum, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the approval of the legal action report of October 16th, 2023 of the IID DRC meeting. Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make motion to approve as presented.
And is there a second?
Mr. Barrett, I think you're muted if you were trying to second.
Pardon?
I think Mr. Barrett was trying to second the motion, but maybe not. He's muted.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Somehow I muted myself.
Is there any opposition to the approval of legal action report? All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Next on the item is a call to the audience. We have individuals may speak up to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who'd like to participate? Doesn't appear that we have anything. Item 4 is case number SD-1023-00118 Crystal Cafe and Gallery. Related activity number is TP-DEV-0923-00396, located at 847 North Stone Avenue. Parcel number is 117031120. C3 zoning, infill and center district, and downtown links sub-district. Is the applicant ready to present?
Hi, Mr. Chair. It's Rory Juneman with Lazarus and Tillman, 5983 East Grant Road. We are ready on the agenda. I saw that there might be some preliminary staff remarks, but I'm happy to go whenever you tell me to.
Okay, well, okay, there is preliminary staff remarks. Thank you, Mr. Juneman. Item A, preliminary staff remarks.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the DRC, this is a change of use from a historic, auto sales and repair site. So this is an adaptive reuse from that to the gallery, which is being identified as general merchandise sales and food service. But I have to mention also the applicant has indicated there's going to be a caretaker's residence on site. So we also are looking at it with a single family residence on site, which is also allowed in the IID. You probably notice on the side and in the agenda, there's equipment owned by the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality for remediation purposes. The equipment is to stay in place until about 2028. And if the applicant decides to utilize that space in the future for something else, then we may need to see this case again in front of the IID DRC, depending what what they may do with that space in the future. But they are proposing the use of the IID for several modifications to UDC standards, including the reduction of parking spaces. They're proposing spaces on the right-of-way of 2nd Street, and the Department of Transportation and Mobility was okay with it. They were just asking them to dimension on the plans the spaces and the right-of-way width, making sure that they maintain the 24 feet wide right-of-way for vehicles, and they have revised their plans. They gave us the last design package, which is what you're looking at, and they're dimensioning that. So seems like we're gonna be okay in the development package stage, at least for that. They're proposing also modifications to the required landscaping and screening requirements, and the applicant will go through those with you. Also with refuse collection. We've been in touch with environmental services. They are okay with the concept. They were just asking the applicant to note clearly on the plans, the designated area where the container will be placed when garbage is not being collected, and making sure the pathway and, for the service vehicle, it's properly identified and dimensioned. So they have done that, but that's going to be finalized at the development package review process. The design professional reviewed this project last month and has recommended approval. We can hear from Mr. Tom after the applicant's presentation for his remarks. This project was reviewed by the Tucson Pima Historical Commission's Plan Review Subcommittee, the PRS, several times. I believe they held 2 courtesy reviews for the applicant in May and then again in October. And the formal review was done last week, and they recommended approval as presented by the applicant. So the DRC's purview is to make sure that the applicant, the project is meeting the requirements as specified in the IID, and issue a recommendation to the Planning and Development Services Director. That's all I have, Mr. Chair, unless you have any other questions for me.
Are there any questions for Maria from DRC?
Not from me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Then we're going to project item B, project presentation by applicant. Mr. Juniman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thanks for being here this morning. Just a few introductions. With me from Lazarus and Sylvan is Robin Large. She prepared the application. And then on the line from Germany is our client, Marco Schreier. And our architect is Rick Bright. He's also on the line as well. Just a little quick overview. Marco is a gem show dealer. He's been coming to Tucson since the 80s. And over the last few years, he's kind of realized that he wants to have sort of he's based out of Germany. He wants to have a U.S. Base. And so that's why the primary reason why he's identified this property. There also may be some potential for other gem show tenants to be in the building, but he'll work on that once you get the approvals and get building. He also identified this property as one that would be ideal for a kind of a mixed use, where the front could be a cafe type restaurant. It's really perfectly suited for that. It's in a great location for it, particularly for pedestrian and bike traffic and customers. So we'll walk through a little bit more of the details of that, but that's kind of the overview of why we're here. Mr. Chair, are you okay if I share some slides?
Please do.
Right. All right, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So just to orient you to the site, we're right on Stone Avenue, kind of halfway between Speedway and 6th Street on the west side of the property. We're right at the corner on the southwest corner of 2nd and Stone, just south of the Sahara apartments. It's a building I'm sure you're all familiar with, probably driven by it numerous times. Most recently, I think it's been it was like a granite contractor shop and showroom, and then I think it was an automotive use. It also was a skate park recently. So it's a building that it has had a lot of uses over the last decade or so. Our underlying zoning is C3. We're not in the West University HPZ. We are though in the Miracle Mile Historic District, which is a National Register district that's relatively new. And then also, as this guy also said, we're in the IID, the Stone and 6th Avenue area of the Downtown Links sub-district. We have worked quite a bit because we're in the historic district. We've got to maintain the contributing status of the property, but that because of some renovations that the prior owner did without permits that likely took it out of that contributing status. We've been working a lot with Jody Brown, the city historic preservation officer, and then we've gone to PRS twice, not because there was some issue. It's actually we went to them proactively to try to help get some guidance on dealing with one element of the property that I'll explain a little bit more in detail. But as Ms. Guy also said last week, we had a great meeting with them. They were very supportive and appreciative of our efforts going to them. So let me start off with kind of the history of this building, because it's got a kind of a unique history. It was opened in 1940. We didn't find a lot of historic photos of the property, but we were able to find a couple of newspaper articles from when the property opened its initial use, which was the Beaudry Motor Company sales service location. It also had a Shell gas station out in the front. If you recall going by this property, there's a canopy out front. Under that canopy was a couple of Shell gas station pumps. But the really unique thing about this property is that when it was opened, it was a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation, and it did not have a front facade. It didn't have a front wall. It was open air. And so that has kind of created some unique challenges with us in that Marco wanted to kind of restore the building and kind of bring it back to what it looked like when it opened in 1940, but you need a front door these days, you need a front wall. And so figuring out that there wasn't a front wall has really kind of created some challenges and allowed us to work with staff and PRS to try to figure out some solutions to that. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I did want to show you what the building looked like back in 2012. This is the picture from the historic property inventory form. I think that Miracle Mile District got sort of approved in 2019, around then. But this is what the building looked like in 2012, and then on the right hand side is what it looks like today, based on some renovations that the prior property owner did, unfortunately without permits. So what those renovations did was likely kick it out of the contributing property status. If it had remained like it was in 2012, it would have stayed in contributing property status because that that contributing status was based on the what the owner probably in the 60s or 70s did when they filled in that front facade. But since those changes have been made on the right, we were sort of in this position where we knew we needed to utilize the IID because this is an adaptive reuse of the building, and there's just some current code standards we're not going to be able to meet with that historic building. But in order to use the IID, we needed to restore it to a contributing status. So I'll talk a little bit more of that in a minute. I do first want to kind of walk through what Marco's vision for the site is. This is a site plan, Stone Avenue on the right, 2nd Street on the north, on the top of the site plan. The first use that he wants to utilize within this building is really office, retail, maybe some show space for his operation as a gem show dealer, but also potentially for others. He could divide it up into multiple tenant spaces if there will be tenants. Throughout the center of the building, though, and in the front, there'll be kind of an open space that he's calling a gallery space. During the gem show, he could use that space for events, for receptions. There's not an intention to use this as a show space that's open to the public. So I don't think there's a potential for a lot of traffic generation. But what he would use it for, maybe what others would use it for, is receptions during the gem show, smaller dealer to dealer type events where you might get 20 to 40 people in there to kind of look at products and just make those business connections during the gem show. The other thing that he'd like to do, as I mentioned, is use the front of the building for a cafe, kind of an informal cafe, and that space would include some of the outdoor space that's along the street frontage under the existing canopy for seating as well. And that cafe can be used for to help with catering during receptions and things like that. So the bulk of the activity for the office and the gallery would likely come during the gem show, but the cafe would be open year round and obviously be open to the public. In this area, Stone, I think there's not a lot of these types of food service uses. So we think that this is a great location for it. Also considering you've got apartments to the north and south and a lot of homes in the area. The hope is to get a lot of local traffic into that cafe. At the rear of the property, this guy also mentioned that there's a Department of Environmental Quality. It's a vapor removal system for contamination. The building had some in its past, it had some dry cleaning uses in there. There's also a larger plume from dry cleaner that's, I think, to the southeast, and that vapor extraction facility is there to help clean up that. It does have an end date once that end date's really determined on the cleanup efforts and the removal of those contaminants beneath. But at some point, likely by 2028, that will go away. And at that point, Marco will likely decide sort of what this rear area could be used for. But until that point, we're really, we really have to keep that equipment there, and it's got to function for that use for the time being. There is an existing building in the back. Part of that's going to be used for storage, and then we'll have a small caretaker unit there, kind of an apartment unit, apartment style unit, but just one unit for somebody who would live there and be on site, mostly for security, but they would be somebody that's associated with Marco and his business as well. So the front landscaping will be really a big addition to this area. Right now, it's all concrete and very sterile, but adding some really pedestrian friendly and street friendly landscaping on that northwest corner will also include some area concrete sort of pad areas that are decorative, but then if they want to have an outdoor event, they could expand over into this area. This here will be a display area for large mineral or kind of gem that again, just for display. And then bicycle parking, some trees along the front. This parking on our north is existing. We'll restripe it, and this DTM is okay with us leaving that parking there. There's also some additional street parking on the north. As you know, for commercial uses, there's no requirements for parking, but we'll be able to use this parking for our customers, drive-up customers for the cafe, and that'll remain. To the southwest or the southeast, we'll have some outdoor seating. There's existing trees there and some additional trees that will help shade this area. Plus, much of this area is covered by canopy, so it's really kind of a nice, ideal outdoor space for that restaurant seating. There was also, this guy also mentioned, there's no place for a trash dumpster. So we'll have a compactor that's on site, and then that bin will be rolled out on trash days as needed. And we'll work with environmental services and on the specifics of that in the development package process. So that's our kind of overview of how the site is going to function. I did want to show and kind of explain what I was alluding to earlier about that east facade, the front facade of the building. What our goal was in working with Jody and PRS was to come up with kind of a front facade that worked. There was an initial thought about doing floor to ceiling glass throughout, but that really was going to be cost prohibitive and actually didn't really work functionally, because inside the building where the kitchen is, there's going to be some spaces where we don't want windows that we don't want windows from the front inside. But what we have done is do windows across the top all the way from one side to another. One of the really cool things about this building is the interior wooden beams are all exposed. They look great. The thought is at night that those kind of will be lit up, and you can, from the outside, you can see that those beams and that structure, and it'll really be kind of a neat feature. But more at the ground level, and all of these dark blue are see-through glass. So down there's some at the ground level. There'll be a solid wall in this area here that will be made up of this metal galvanized kind of garage door type metal. The reason that we chose that is there's an existing garage door on the north facade that's going to be maintained, and we were looking for some sort of a material that that would have likely been around in the 1940s, but that is already on the building, and that was really the reason for working through what that material is. We worked with Jody and we worked with PRS in those initial study sessions to kind of come up with that material. So even though this represents on this rendering as a darker material, it'll be a lighter silver kind of galvanized corrugated look, garage door look. The front door will be glass, and then again, the metal material will be in this area. Behind this will be mostly the kitchen and some of the cafe area. And then this will be kind of a spandrel opaque glass in this corner. But again, the rest of the dark blue is kind of clear glass. And then the frames will be kind of a lighter aluminum. The goal of all of that is that this facade is kind of a light, open space. And again, you have to have a wall, but harkening back to that original open air front facade is kind of the intent of this design. Also on this rendering are the gabions that'll serve as a barrier between, or gabion wall that'll serve as a barrier between the stone traffic and the seating area, the outdoor seating area. Our north elevation will maintain most of it as it is today. This area here is a big concrete header that will remain, and then the exposed brick. There are 4 openings on the building that will maintain and likely put a kind of a pane glass in those areas. And then there will be sort of an improvement in the rear of the fencing that screens the open space back there, and that vapor extraction equipment that's going to remain there for a few years. As Maria said, if Marco decides to do something different with this back area, that would likely require a submittal for that area and to come back to you for that. That's in the future, and you know, if that occurs, that time will come back to you. One thing I did want to note is on this canopy. Right now, it's solid. It's a solid stucco. The historic pictures showed some sort of, whether it's a relief or a painting, kind of a multicolor in that area, and we would restore that look from the original. And I'll show you, here's some renderings that sort of show that. So there's, whether it's paint or it was actually inset, there was a kind of a relief to this, and we'll restore that. But these are some renderings of what we anticipate the project to look like. Again, a vast improvement along the street frontage with that landscaping. And oops, here's a different view. You can kind of see where the glazing, the glass will be along the side, and then along the length of at the top of that facade. And then this will be that metal, kind of galvanized metal in these 2 areas along the front facade. And we also just included some landscaping materials just for your information, and a landscape palette. And that is it. So I'm happy to take any questions, and Rick's on as well. If you have any questions about any of the design or the uses on the property.
Thank you, Rory. Are there questions for Mr. Juneman?
I got a question.
Okay.
Can we just run through what relief components we're looking with the IID, what you're trying to adhere, what you are adhering with and what you are not able to adhere with?
Yeah, I don't have that right in front of me. I know that I think setback are the main thing that we don't comply with, and then parking. We're for the non-residential uses, the IID doesn't require any parking. If we had to comply with the UDC, that's really the primary thing, is we have to provide quite a bit of parking for the cafe, not as much for the office use. So those I think really parking is the main reason why we're utilizing the IID.
Thank you. Any other questions for Roy? Robin?
This isn't exactly necessarily part of our purview, but I'm just curious about it. Service to the kitchen, and like things like the grease interceptor and just deliveries, is that intended to be organized through the west side, through that open area, through the back?
Yeah, Rick, can you kind of speak to the specifics of the kitchen? And I can bring up the site plan too. Rick, are you there?
He just came on.
Hi, Rick.
Rick, are you able to?
Agent. Rick, we're having a tough time with your connection.
Let's see.
Just to elaborate on my concern is just the service side of the kitchen, deliveries, and then the kind of the routing of the trash out of the kitchen, because that's where a lot will be generated. And then things like servicing the grease interceptor from, the 3 compartment sink, just how that impacts the flow on the street side is where I'm interested to know how that's being resolved.
I think from a sort of a service flow and how the property operates, there's a back door that's currently there right now, fairly large area, and I think
And
most
is there a gate on the north side of that outdoor, like right there? Is there a gate
Yes.
there?
Yeah,
Got it. Okay.
there's a gate there. So whether it's trash or deliveries, I think that will all come through this area, through this large hallway and into the restaurant.
Right. So that would just be something that I would think wants to be thought through so that that limits impact on traffic flow and the rest of the tenants as well.
And then, let's see, Rick, were you able to get on, or maybe I can call you? Yeah, help answer it. Let's see if I can get in touch. Hey, Rick, are you having problems with Teams?
Like since I'm on, but can't hear me.
Do you want to convey the answer and I can, or tell me the answer and I can kind of convey it to them?
Yeah, so that'll be service from that area to the west. And there's a gate and a curb cut on the northwest corner there
Okay.
that allows access. And that's where we're planning on putting the interceptors out there.
Great. Thank you. That addresses my concerns. Thank you.
Okay, you bet.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I've got a couple. I attended the courtesy meeting and PRS last week, so this isn't my first rodeo on seeing the plans, and I'm generally fine with all of them. One thing I am a little concerned with is, I know it was a prior owner, but the building's constructed out of the older soft bricks that we're all aware of in historic districts and their moisture absorption abilities. And I expect that the building was probably, since it was done in 1940, was probably originally stuccoed. So the exposure of the bricks is somewhat contrary to Secretary of Interior standards. I realize it's an aesthetic that's fairly current in Tucson for adaptive reuse of historic buildings. But do you have any plans for a moisture barrier or other mitigation for those soft bricks now that they're exposed possibly for the first time. And Jody, does that have anything to do with contributing status that was done? Or is that just guidance that is suggestive, which is kind of too late to deal with because it's after the fact?
So if you want me to pitch in, sorry. This is Jody Brown. I'm the Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Tucson. So at Rory's request, I went out and looked at the building the other day on my way home. I don't think it was originally stuccoed based on the way that the paint is adhering to it. And it looks like it was stuccoed at a later time, probably to cover up some of the modifications that had happened to the building because they enclosed some windows and such like that. The rear of the building was never stuccoed. It's just like paint.
Okay.
That's peeling off. So I expect that it's actually not soft brick. It's a hardy brick. I expect that it was originally probably unpainted and then painted a little later after that and then stuccoed after that. As it comes to, regardless, the previous owner sandblasted or did something, some mechanical removal, some abrasive removal of the stucco and then the paint. So the protective outer layer for the brick is gone. And anytime you have that, then you're going to have some degree of deterioration over time. So, you have water repellent and water proofing. You always have to be careful about the application of that because it can actually change the brick. And there's a building that I always see in Coronado in San Diego. When the light hits it just perfectly, it's shiny. It's a shiny brick and it's horrible, horrible, horrible because they didn't really do the test patch to see what it would do to the brick. So that's one concern. Just, I'm not opposed to it, but it's you want to use the water repellent because you want it to be breathable and you want to do a test patch just to understand what the impact is to the brick. The other concern that I have is because a lot of the paint is still there. It's not like a fully clean surface. When you apply that, how effective is it going to be since you still have parts of previous applications on the brick there? And I think that these are still things to work out, but I don't know if that answers your question, John.
It does. I just thought I'd bring it up because we're starting to see this more and more, and it does impact potentially the long-term integrity or of the structure. So hopefully it just has recommendations that you work with the historic preservation officer to develop a plan so that the brick's stabilized, but not as I'm not going to make it a requirement per our motion, but otherwise I'm perfectly fine with the plans as presented. I like this latest iteration.
Okay. Other questions?
Thanks,
John. Thank you, Jody. I have a question for Rory. Has there been outreach to either Dunbar and West University, because they're on both sides of Stone there, and they're impacted potentially by parking issues, et cetera, because both neighborhoods have a lot of on-street parking existing. So has there been any outreach to them?
Yeah, we held a neighborhood meeting and we had residents from both neighborhoods, I think probably more from Dunbar. And we discussed discussed parking. We had a few people who were concerned. We also had some people who came up to us and said, there's plenty of street parking and this, if that they weren't concerned about the potential for parking to become a nuisance from the project. I think the hope is that we're going to get quite a bit of pedestrian and bicycle customers for this. maybe during the gem show, when you're having smaller events, you might have more vehicle trips, but you also get a lot of those folks are using ride sharing services too. So we did, after that neighborhood meeting, we didn't do any targeted outreach to either neighborhood, but we had a good attendance at that neighborhood meeting and had some discussion about it then.
Okay, thank you. One other thing I was thinking of is that there are two streets which are also referred to as washes, First Street Wash and Second Street Wash. In heavy rains, it flows west. And I know Dunbar is taking precautions to take water once it gets past Stone. I don't know if it's a concern at all for your development. Heavy rains mainly on Second Street, but First Street runs like a small river at times. So that's all.
Yeah, I don't know that we've had any specific discussions about it, but that's good. Thank you for bringing that up, and Marco's on and Rick's on, and that's noted. So thank you.
Any other questions for Rory Junman? Okay, next on the agenda is design professional findings and recommendations. Faye.
Thank you. Let's see, for the design review, what we looked at was the greater incentive district and the downtown links sub-district. In the report, we've said everything looked fine, but just to satisfy my own curiosity, I looked at the building and the drawings, and I know that we're trying to accommodate the original wall that was there, but the canopy seems like it's I guess the question is the canopy the original canopy, or did that get moved? Did it get shoved down to one end, or is the main entrance where it's got shown in the 2023 shot there?
So to our knowledge, the canopy hasn't been moved. But looking at the pictures, we don't think the main structure of the canopy has changed. There's definitely been some shoring up on the sort of the northeast corner, because that it does not look like the that support post was there in the original photos, but like you're looking at the old Google Street View, it looks like since at least the 2011 timeframe, or I thought 2008 even, that there was that nothing has really changed. To our knowledge, the prior owner hasn't made any changes. If there were changes from 1940, they were done quite early, but it doesn't appear, it looks like from the 1940 pictures to now, that canopy is generally the same, except for maybe the shoring up of it at that northeast corner.
Okay.
Rick, does that sound, that's.
Thinking off of that one newspaper photograph, I think that canopy was there. The column on the northeast corner, that looks like a temporary brace.
Yeah.
There had to be a column there because there's no way to support the canopy back into the building. So I think that got hit by something, and then they put a temporary shore, so we'll put it back for the original.
On that northeast corner is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Did y'all hear that? Did you hear that from Rick? Okay.
Okay, well, that's all I have.
Okay. Any questions for Faye Tom? If there are no more questions, is there a motion on the floor?
just what we're showing. So are showing
I move approval as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, is there? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank
I'm
you.
really
Mr. Chair,
excited to see this move forward. Sorry, Maria.
no, I just was, I missed who's did the second on the motion.
I made the
John.
second. Maria?
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate it and appreciate your time this morning.
Yeah,
And
it's
the-
exciting to see that. I've been watching this building since 1977, so it's nice to see the changes. Next on the agenda is amended mayor and council rules and regulations for City of Tucson boards, committees, and commissions, BCCs. This is information only. Maria, do you have anything?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the DRC, you probably already went through the documentation, but yeah, in response to a new bill by the state of Arizona, the clerk's office, the mayor and council, approved a new resolution with revisions to the rules and regulations related to all the boards, committees, and commissions in the city of Tucson. I included in my documentation to you and posted on your website the new guidelines they have provided. And again, these are guidelines, and they're not new. So basically, it's in terms of how to use technology when meeting virtually or hybrid, in a hybrid format. So we did ask the clerk's office for some clarifications, and they did let us know that BCCs can continue meeting virtually, or hybrid, or in person, or a mix of all the above. Whenever we end up meeting in person or hybrid, we would need to make sure that the facility, it's with City of Tucson owned facility, and that we have all the electronic equipment available to hold such meetings. So, this is just information. You don't have to vote on it. There's some, because you're not regulated by the clerk's office. For instance, the design review board, it is regulated by the clerk's office. They needed to vote on how they're gonna hold their meetings moving forward. They voted to do it virtually and to meet in person as necessary, depending on the case, just to allow the general public to attend if it's a very controversial case that's being reviewed. So that's pretty much it. Let me know if you have any questions, and if I don't have the answers, I can find them out from the clerk's office.
Thank you, Maria. Any questions?
Yeah, I suggested a couple things in a draft edit of the rules and procedures. One thing that we kind of forget sometimes is we're not a BCC. We are a city manager appointed board and not subject to BCC rules. But it's good guidance for options, and I think we ought to similarly follow for the next calendar year, if we're going to kind of do anything, continue to meet virtually, but at the discretion of the chair on a case-by-case basis. For simple projects like this, since we're really dependent on technological background, in-person is kind of problematic, but hybrid could work. But if we were to do a case like the union again, for instance, we would probably want to have a live meeting and have some interaction with the public in that particular case. So I would suggest that we generally do virtual meetings, but have the option to do the other meetings at the discretion of the chair in consultation with the staff. And that was one of the lines I put in a suggested edits for us to talk about at the next step.
I think that'd be good to do, to have. It's a good suggestion.
Does that seem reasonable?
I don't have any issue
I-
with that. I just wasn't quite sure on the item that Maria sent out this morning, what your edits were and what I just wasn't sure what we were, is that which color was John's?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I should have clarified in my email, but yeah, the original proposed revisions by staff was in red, just to bring it up to date. And then the golden edits are Mr. Bird's proposed changes.
John, those edits are just making it consistent with the BCC language. Am I understanding that correctly?
No. I went back through my old records. We don't have any bylaws per se, but Jim Mazzacco scrounged together a whole bunch of documents for the July 28th, 2015 meeting that these rules and procedures were adopted by, but they are absolutely riddled with errors. For instance, major review says it's in the original format, says it's in section 5.16. There is no section 5.16. It's actually 5.12, 0.6b. And so I corrected that. Maria had corrected the 100-foot notice because it went up from 50 feet, but the old language said 300 feet, and it's now the 400-foot notice procedure. In the above area, it's actually lifted directly from section 5.12.1 of the purpose, but it pulled out item A and made that the preamble, and then subordinated items B through F. And I think we ought to put it back correctively by having the little preamble at the top and then relist the 6 items as they are technically in the code to correct that portion of it, because it doesn't actually conform to the code currently. And then the other stuff were recommendations of policy changes that have happened over time. And I added the stuff that we probably should talk about. The formatting from Maria's docx when it came into me and was adapted to my computer's Pages program, couldn't format this stuff. It's possible we need 12 items to list some of these things separately. The original document has 6 items, but in adding the language under item 6 that was in Maria's draft that was sent out last week, it number 6 was moved over to discussion of what the design professional would do, but took out that we were actually to make a recommendation as one of our rules of procedure. So I threw in some stuff up for discussion. I think we probably ought to briefly talk about a couple of things that I've suggested and give feedback to Maria and have her come back with a revised draft, because she caught some stuff, but not others. And it's been dangling for 9 years, and it's not like we access it that much, obviously, because no one has noticed in that amount of time how wrong those were. You know, I actually found a printed copy in my binder that I got way back when, which seems like ancient history now. But there's other things that at one point was commented on by the city clerk when it thought it had jurisdiction, like, do we elect chairs and vice chairs? Is that one of the policies of this board? Should we have a periodic review of the terms? Fortunately, we have all been reappointed because we all expired technically during the gap in timeframes. But that should be done in advance so we can prepare, you know, if someone moves off and someone else comes on, the terms will be staggered. So I just wanted to put in some guidance so it's actually in a document, has time changes, because if there isn't a guiding document that's on file with the city, we'll lose this history if any of us go. So I realize you got it 7 minutes before the meeting. And I don't know that we have the time to discuss and make full recommendations to approve a new updated policy and procedure. That's why I reformatted this as a draft instead of revised policies and procedures as of today's date. But I think we ought to think about it and then schedule it for discussion, or individually give our feedback to Maria so she can come up with a new draft, and have staff vet some of my comments and see how they would like to format them or adjust them, because I may have made an error myself. I just noticed a bunch of stuff and was able to reach Maria yesterday and said, wait a minute, we've got to fix this. So that's where I'm coming from here.
I have a question for Maria. Maria, how would you like to proceed on this?
I would recommend, Mr. Chair, because staff hasn't had a chance to look at Mr. Burr's proposed revisions.
Okay.
I would recommend that at the next DRC meeting, we dedicate time to review a draft. Once staff has a chance to vet everything that we're seeing here in gold, and provide you with a cleaner copy for review. And for today, just if you have any DRC members have any major concerns or suggestions that I can take in right now, so I can, when I take a look at the whole draft, I can come back to you with a response.
We send those to you as we have the opportunity to read this.
Yes, if you want to send them individually to me by email, don't talk to each other, discussing it, and then I can put something together and a clean copy for the DRC to review.
This can be sent to us individually. We can look at it and get back to you individually, just to you about comments on it.
Correct. If just to help us, once we meet, move faster if you want, or we can just discuss at the meeting.
Okay.
So like there were little things like previously we had the option to do a field trip for a complex case to go look contextually for issues, and we would meet the design team to do that. That was gotten rid of, but I think we ought to put it back as an option, because there may be a case where we need to do that. And so I wanted to leave the options open as they are still currently in the iteration of the UDC IID, and then and I think the choice of the word may is probably best on a lot of these things instead of definitively must. And I really leave it to staff to determine what their preference is and the orders of all of these things. But it's time to review this stuff and come up with new policies and procedures, so most people who know what we do understand our procedures. And also, as of December 6th, the city of PDSD came up with a whole new checklist for all the special districts, which all of these things are now listed as in the new online permitting system. And it's a really comprehensive list for the IID or Rio Nuevo. We have found that some cases also get reviewed by the design review board for Rio Nuevo compliance and then come to us for IID compliance if they do different things. And so all of that ought to be at least alluded to in this document, which it wasn't.
Okay. Okay, well, Maria, you will take this forward and send us out these drafts and then receive our comments on them. Is that correct?
If that's what the DRC would like to go with, And then we fully discuss at our next DRC meeting.
Does
I
that
bring
work
up
for-
just something about the IID and just some of the process I've seen. I mean, it happens on projects that we personally have, but I believe submitting for IID approval should go above and beyond minimum code requirements and standards, since you're asking for special exceptions. And quite honestly, in most cases in the site, we are barely meeting minimum requirements. Our last project was an example of that, where we barely met the street border requirements. We didn't show any additional enhancements. We didn't do anything additional above and beyond. It's a great project. It's taking a project that's basically been vacant for a long time. But I'm not seeing how this board is setting an example of how to go above and beyond minimum code requirements. And I thought that was the purpose of this board. So I got a real question about what's being done.
You know,
And I'm at fault with that, but at the same time, I'm trying to find out how we need to say, look, we're gonna go above and beyond and require minimum, not minimum standards. We're gonna make sure we're going to beyond and above that.
you know, we've all been on here for a long time and we all have separate concerns. This is just my self-directed stab at a draft. But I think everybody ought to send in their comments for consideration for a final draft. And Eric, write them up. I'm happy to consider the perspectives. All of us should be happy to consider the perspectives of all of us and a design professional and staff feedback and all of the above, so that we can kind of suggest to people, you know, you're getting something here for the trade-off of using the optional zoning. What are you providing back to the community?
Quite honestly, it's an open question. Am I correct or am I off base or what? But I mean, in most cases, most of the projects we've seen of late don't provide solar, don't provide intensive uses of water harvesting, do not provide additional shade trees. You know, there's minimum several different things we can go down in different aspects on that. Obviously I just look at the site, but I don't know if there's minimum standards from a building standpoint. Like, look, we don't want to see stick and stucco. We want to see masonry construction. We want to see durable materials that are long-term durable components, sustainable components. That really, I thought the purpose of the ID was supposed to be about.
That's why I put a question mark. What else should we include of policies and procedures that we look at and think of about it as a board? So
Anyway,
I wasn't ready to approve the previous version because of its, you know, technical flaws, but it's time to have this discussion, and we haven't updated this thing since 2015.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Eric, I really appreciate what you're saying, and I think that there's merit to that. I do think that we need to be really conscientious of reading through the IID and see where we can justify comments regarding that, so that it's supported by, because it becomes very arbitrary. You and I are very rational people, and so what we would ask for would be completely rational and supportable. But if other people were on this in this same role, I think we need to be cautious. I really want to say I completely appreciate the aspirational nature of your comment. On the other hand, I don't want this group to create arbitrary roadblocks to the purpose of, infill development. And I say that with all due respect, but that would be my concern about what does that really mean and how is that enforced and what is our purview as we look at those particular things in a case by case basis. And when you get to the building side, it becomes very, very difficult, because if the development has been penciled out as a stud and stucco project and you're telling them it has to be CMU, that may be outside our purview, and not that I don't agree with you. I just worry that it opens up something that we need to understand what the unintended consequences of that might be.
I have the same, I mean, reservations as well when I'm promoting that we should be doing more, but at the same time, I'm like, I mean, that's quite honestly, it's quite difficult where you have historical inputs and other several different review
Right, right.
boards involved in
And where
this.
we're just happy to see, you know, vacant, underutilized properties get new life. I mean, we're so
Correct.
desperate for that in our community that we probably have not raised that bar quite as you're saying. But anyway, I don't disagree with you. I just want to offer that. And I think that's something that we should understand with some staff guidance and just
Yeah.
think about what that means to us as a group.
We could also just put in just an aspirational goal as a methodology without mandating any requirements specific, and again, as usual, treat every case as it on a case by case basis, depending upon its unique context.
Yeah, I think
Noted.
that's the goal. How do we request components within it that show that you're going above and beyond minimum code requirements is what I'm getting at. How you do that, I don't know yet. Actually, that's what each project's up to. But I mean, to say, look, we're worked with you know, trees for Tucson and provide additional trees. We are doing whatever. We're, you know, I don't know, we address this a lot in downtown developments and trying to see how we can go and beyond. And ultimately it comes down to, you know, can we afford these components or not? Are we making the project not affordable because we're trying to ask additional components to it? So, anyway, I got lots of thoughts about that, but at the same time, how to get there in a code format. That's you know, part of me thinks that a lot of our code should not be code, you know, shouldn't be minimums. They should be enhancements or if you're looking for reduced parking, you're going to provide X, Y, and Z above and beyond minimum standards to achieve those and provide trade-offs. If you're looking to reduce something, then you're going to provide an enhancement to that. Again, what that looks like, you know, that's up to each individual project and each different aspect of it. But
Well,
I think we need incentive-based components, not minimum code requirements.
Well, that also speaks to the whole kind of long-going background conversation of development benefit agreements with neighborhoods impacted by these things, of, you know, encouraging that sort of thing, but not being able to mandate them. So there's no reason we can't list aspirational goals for the type of development the city of Tucson would like for its infill that creates desirable neighborhoods.
Okay. I will do what I can. I'm not a great wordsmith. I would just that's not my forte as far as writing, just not. I will, anyone that's worked with me probably knows that, but I'll just tell you up front, but I'll put some, get some just general bubble notes and thoughts together, and then you guys can look and see how you want to modify or tweak it from there.
Great.
So Mr. Chair, members of the DRC, do we want to make a motion to continue this item
I'm happy
to the next DRC meeting?
I'm happy to make that motion.
Second.
Okay. Do you like us to vote on? Is that enough?
Aye.
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 Aye. But you have some ideas too, Faye.
Yeah, actually, as you guys were talking, I was saying, what if there's something that the city wants and it's easy for the developer just to do that? So maybe it's like replacing all the sidewalk because it's all broken and everything. City could pay for it. City could pay for it, but
yeah,
make a deal with the developer.
That's interesting. And I was sort of thinking about, I don't know if this I mean, we've voted on the motion, but Eric, I don't know if maybe what you're thinking of is, for example, on the one we just saw, maybe they give up some of that parking on the north to do water harvesting and plant a few more trees. And maybe instead of 9 spaces, they have 5 spaces because they're not required to have any spaces. And those spaces are really for their convenience and for their customers. And so that's a kind of balance. And
Mhm.
I think what we're going to find is that even on this board, we all have a little bit of a different opinion about priorities and what, but I think it's an interesting conversation and I think it's exactly what we should be thinking about. So I stand with my vote to revisit this as we move forward.
Yep, good ideas.
Maria, when we say the next meeting, that usually coincides with a submittal, and I don't know if any submittals are coming up, but I'm curious on this subject of the policies that John has worked on and what Eric's brought up. Does that mean we might not meet again for several months, or what is the situation there?
It's up to it's up to the DRC. We can organize a meeting next month, if that's the way the DRC would like to address the rules of procedure. Even if we don't have a case to review, we can just hold a meeting just for that.
Yeah. And I don't know if it needs to be next month, but Chris, I would suggest that we do schedule a meeting to follow up on this regardless of the submittal schedule, so we sort of don't lose the momentum of this conversation.
Mhm.
I
So,
agree. And, I'm happy to continue as vice chair, but I think we should have an annual vote. We used to, on that sort of thing. And I'm happy to nominate, but it's not actually on the agenda, so we can't do that this time, but I think that should be placed on the agenda for this discussion meeting as well, at the beginning of the calendar year.
okay.
Can we look to set something up in about a month or 3 weeks out or something like that, knowing that most everyone's gone? Some are leaving, some are stuck here.
A quiet week sometime in January or early February would be fine. Whatever a Google poll of availability produces.
Yeah, that'll work.
Same with staff time. When does it fit in their schedules? Because we don't know anything in the pipeline.
Yeah, I'll be sending a doodle poll probably at the beginning of next year.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, members of the DRB, because today is my last day for my holiday break.
I was gonna
so-
say, wait, you're leaving? No.
No.
At least leave your mural there.
Like,
No. I just, to spend time with family. So, and when I come back, I'll send you the doodle polls and find a time.
Hey, we may be able to approve minutes from this meeting in a timely fashion before the director issues a decision on the case. We haven't done that in a long time. I'm teasing.
And the other item, Mr. Chair, is the reappointments. You already mentioned that, and I want to thank everybody for your willingness to keep helping the Tucson community and be able to share your knowledge and your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Maria.
This is a appointment.
thank you all. You have a great holiday break. Enjoy.
Happy holidays.
Okay.
Yep.
Bye-bye, everybody. Happy
Bye.
holidays.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks. You still on, Maria?
I am on. I'm trying to find the button to stop recording.
Are you